I can honor your time. Attendance tracking and notification. You may or may not have this set up at your school or LEA currently, but what is attendance tracking and notification? This is a tracking system that PowerSchool can set up to allow for tracking of students' absences using a combination of thresholds and triggers. So when a student hits, say, the 3-day threshold, it will trigger information in PowerSchool that you can then extract out and create those attendance letters. North Carolina does track 3, 6, and 10-day absences, making sure that parents and guardians are aware if a student has hit that 3, 6, or 10-day absence mark. And you can see on the screen Public School Laws of North Carolina, Article 26. If you need some light reading, you can always go to that to look and see exactly what the policy for public schools of North Carolina is regarding compulsory attendance. Now, I am showing this in a presentation, but I'm not going to use the presentation. I'm actually going to be in our training environment to look at how you can set up your attendance tracking and notification. Please know that this is a training environment, so things will look differently or may look differently to you, but make sure that maybe you can follow along and use this training site to kind of show you how to get there as well. I do see that some people are having audio issues. Let's do one more check to make sure that everyone can hear me. Maybe it is just a one-off and we need to work with speakers. So please raise your hand if you can hear me. I have my speakers and mic up as loud as it can go. Not sure you want it any louder than that. Okay, so I do see several hands. So if you are having trouble, you wouldn't know because you can't hear me. If you're having trouble with your audio, hopefully you'll be able to follow along with the slides. But hopefully you will get that corrected before, so not too far into the webinar. Okay, so like I said, I am in a school here in our training environment. When you start setting up your attendance for attendance tracking and notification, there are a couple of things that schools need to do, as well as the LEA needs to do to set up your attendance tracking and notification. The school that I am in currently is a meeting attendance school, and it is already set up for attendance tracking. Now, we will later in the presentation go into a school that is not set up so that I can walk you through that process. But to look at some preliminary things, I am in a school that already has attendance tracking set up. The first thing that I do want to show you is the attendance code categories. On your start page under setup, you have school setup. The first set of things you see are most of your attendance issues. You want to look at your attendance code categories. These are the categories that we use in the state of North Carolina: excused absences, unexcused absences, tardies, and if your school is using attendance tracking and notification, you will see an extra code, that ATT code, right? If your school does not currently have this set up, you probably do not see that ATT code. All of the different codes and descriptions for our attendance are linked to one of these three categories here: excused, unexcused, or tardies. Now, it is very important that you make sure that all of your attendance codes are mapped properly. So I'm in the school setup, and now I'm going to look at attendance codes. And when I say map properly, this is what I mean, that there is this particular code, 1A, for this particular description, illness, or injury. Right? Everything on this particular page needs to be exactly as it is shown. you need to have these codes and these descriptions. Now, where it says teacher assign, are you allowing your teachers to assign a student illness or injury? The three customary ones are present, unexcused absence, and unexcused tardy. But it is an LEA decision if you want to allow your teachers to enter more than those codes. If we go into the actual code, okay, you can see that we have the value, the description. If the student has this value, what is their presence? Are they present or are they absent? In this case, illness or injury is an absent. The code categories that we just talked about, this is an excused code. Okay. Can teachers assign in this particular environment? No, teachers cannot assign these. Okay. So that's something that you need to look at. You want to look at your attendance codes to make sure that they are mapped correctly. Make sure that your attendance code categories are set up, and we are going to walk through the setup of an attendance tracking code category. And the last thing you want to check on is the attendance conversion. This is going to tell you whether your school is a meeting attendance school. So, like I said, this particular school is a meeting attendance. They take attendance in every period or every meeting of that day. North Carolina is time to day school. So even though you have period today, we do not use that in North Carolina. You could also have daily attendance schools set up. I know a lot of the elementary school that I worked at was a daily attendance school, so we only took attendance once a day. Okay? Now, I'm going to get out of this school setup and I'm going to go over to the LEA level because, like I said, there are things that need to be set up not just at the school level for attendance tracking, but also at the LEA level. So here I am in my training environment at the LEA level. I'm going to scroll down under Setup and choose LEA. Right here at the top, I see Attendance Tracking and Notification. And I have some different types of attendance tracking notification. Tracking methods, unexcused levels, illness levels, which we do not use, and update calculation year. At the LEA level, the tracking method needs to be set up. Okay, this particular LEA is already set up. They've set up a new attendance tracking method as a percent method. This is required. Okay, so the name is percent. You can see that there are other things that PowerSchool gives you to track attendance, but we only use the percent. And the threshold here is 51%. Now, attendance tracking methods are used to track unexcused absences only at this point. The percent method is calculated as greater than the value set for this threshold. So in this case, the threshold is 51. The student must be absent more than 51% of the day in order to be reported. Okay, so that is done at the LEA level. Okay, this needs to be set up at the LEA level. I'm going to go back out to my LEA setup, my attendance tracking and notification, okay, and my unexcused levels. Again, this has already been set up. The level name is truant. Okay, that's what we're looking for. The tracking method. How are we going to track truant students? We're going to use the percent method. What triggers are we going to use? The state of North Carolina uses 3 triggers, 3, 6, and 10-day triggers. So trigger number 1 is saying that that student has 3 unexcused absences. Trigger number 2 says that that student has 6 unexcused absences. And trigger 3 is they have 10 unexcused absences. Okay. So these two, the tracking method for percent that is required needs to be set up. Your unexcused truancy levels need to be set up. Illness levels. If you have, your LEA has anything here, it needs to be cleared. Okay. We do not track illness tracking levels. So there should be nothing in this category. Okay. And the last thing that the LEA needs to look at is this update calculation year. When you go to this update calculation year, this is confirming that these schools have their years and terms set up and that they have been, and that attendance tracking has been defined. That means they've gone in and they've created that ATT attendance code. That's what this is telling us. You can see that my high school that I was in earlier is here. You will need to do this every year if you intend to continue to do attendance tracking and notification. It's simply coming here to make sure that they are set up. When you submit, it's going to ask you, the calculation year will be changed to 15-16 for all of these schools. Yes, I'm sure I want them all to be in the 15-16 year. Okay. Still at the LEA level. Now I want to refresh for all of my schools their attendance. Okay. So this refresh must be run each time just prior to running the reports at the school level. Okay. You'll see that this can be set up to run as a daily thing. So it's something that you can set up that way. But it needs to be run before schools can run this, okay? So let me scroll down. Under system reports, you see attendance tracking and notification. Oh, sorry, Wendy, I am going to slow down for you. We're in our reports at the LEA level, system reports, attendance tracking and notification, okay? Refresh attendance tracking data, okay? Attendance tracking and notification, or ATN, is very date driven, okay? So any date overlaps that your schools have in their years and terms are going to cause this to fail. So this is one reason you need to run this refreshing attendance tracking report, to make sure that all of your schools are set up properly before it can work. This is what I was saying can be run in the background. It can be run immediately. It can be run nightly on the weekend at a specific time. Then you need to submit this. I'm not going to submit this. It's going to give me an error because it is a training database. But when you submit this, you should get, honestly, a blank report that's going to tell you that all of your schools have set up their years and terms properly. Okay. At this point, once the LEA has done this refresh, schools can run their tracking or truancy views and truancy extracts. All right, so we're going to go into a school that does not have the ATN set up so that we can walk through the process. And while we're changing to these schools, I'm going to see if Sue-Ann has any questions that we need to address to the group. And I do see a question right away that says, we are not having success with running the refresh attendance tracking report unless we do this manually each day. And honestly, Ava, that is something that we have heard from the field, although it should, the system should work so that it can do this automatically. We have heard from other people saying that this does need to be a manual effort. So it is something that we are aware of and that we're looking into. Is it best to run nightly? Your schools are waiting for you to do this refresh in order for them to do their truancy views and truancy extracts. So if it is not done nightly or on a schedule that the schools are aware of, then they might not, or they won't be able to get the most accurate information. Okay. So here we are in a school that is not set up for attendance tracking. So we're going to set this one up together. We're going to go down to our school level. I'm going to check my attendance conversion. I can see that this is a daily attendance school. Okay. I'm going to go back out to my school setup. I'm going to look at my attendance code categories. So now you see I only have 3 attendance code categories: excused, unexcused, and tardy. This is where I need to set up my new attendance tracking. I'm going to give it a code, give it a name, and a description. I can choose which order I want to see this on the screen and submit. Now I have my 4 attendance code categories, okay? But we're not done setting this up so that we can run our ATN. We need to go back out to our school and actually go to our attendance codes. This is another reason why these need to be mapped correctly. We are only looking at unexcused absences. This is what we would like to track. So we're going to open my unexcused absences. You see my code, the description, the present, and now you see that I have added my ATT code. I want this code to be used when tracking. So you see it did not get rid of my unexcused, but it just added my tracking code as well. Okay, so I'm going to submit that. Now, for daily attendance schools, this is going to be important, and it's only for daily attendance schools. Meeting attendance schools do not need to do this. Okay, so we're going to go into my attendance conversions. Okay, for daily attendance schools, you're going to click on code and none. Scroll down to my 2A or my unexcused absence code, okay, and enter a 0. Everything else is blank. If you see something on this screen that looks different than this, if you have numbers in other categories, get rid of them, okay? For a daily attendance school, this needs to say 0. For a meeting attendance school, you do not need to do anything. You back up. Someone wants to know how you got there. You have a question, Sue Ann? Can you back up?
to know how you got to where you are right now.
Okay. I'm going to go back to the start page. And it's going to spin. I'm at the school level. I'm going to go to school. And I have my attendance topics here. Attendance conversion. When I click on attendance conversion, you're going to see FTE, period, code, time. Under code, you will see none if it is not set up. When you click on it, it will show you your code and daily attendance value. Okay, this is for a daily attendance. 2A, or an unexcused absence, needs to have a 0. We know that a 1 attendance value is present, a 0 attendance value is absent. For daily attendance schools, this needs to be set up. Meeting attendance schools do not need to worry about this. Okay? The next step that a school needs to take is now they need to refresh their attendance as well. Okay, we talked about how the LEA needs to refresh attendance, and I've seen many questions come through about that having to be a manual process. But the schools also need to refresh their attendance. And this is going to be under special functions. So I'm going to go back to our start page. Special functions. Here at the top, you see attendance functions. And refresh Premier attendance views data. Okay, you want to make sure that this is refreshed. The description, it's refreshing that attendance view if data has changed. Now, this does take, it can take a while, okay, but you do want to submit this before you have, before you go into do your truancy views and your truancy extracts. And you can continue to refresh. So once this is refreshed, then you can go into your system reports. And I'm going to go ahead with the process because, like I said, this refresh can take several minutes in order to work. From my start page, when I want to run attendance tracking, still at the school level, I'm going to go to my system reports. And when I scroll down, I see attendance tracking and notification. This refresh attendance tracking data, you may notice that this is the same screen from the LEA level. This is what needs to be done at the LEA level, and if it is attempted at the school level, it will give you an error. So we're ready to run our report. Our refresh is done. We're assuming our refresh is finished. Now we are ready to run our attendance letters. You always want to run the view only first. Okay? When you run the view only first, it's going to search for your students that have hit that threshold, that have hit that trigger. We have noticed that if you need to leave these blank, you don't want to check them. There have been reports that causes something odd to happen within the system. What kind of extract? We're looking at unexcused absences, truant, and here are your triggers. Trigger 1 is going to be that 3-day absence. Trigger 2 is going to be the 6-day absence. Trigger 3 is going to be the 10-day absence. You do have to run this for each of your triggers. So this is a much faster report. Obviously, you can see that my refresh is still working. Now, because we just set this up, I'm not thinking there's going to be any students, so you can see that here. But if we did have students, we would have all of this information. And I'm going to go actually to a school that I know has some things in this report so you can see what it looks like. Okay, so here's my truancy view report. Oh, excuse me. It's still spinning, I see that. I apologize. Let's see if there's any other. So it will give you those options. When you're looking at the view, something that you'll notice is that you can set this as a current selection once you have all of the students that have hit this trigger. You can set this as a current selection and use this as part of your group with one of your group functions. The purpose for running the view only first. You know, you have those kids that do bring in their medical excuses or their notes from their parents daily. As an elementary school teacher, if I had students that were absent, I would have notes come in even a week or so later. Running the view is going to give you the opportunity just to check against maybe notes that came in that day. So say little Robbie was out last Monday and he just now remembered to take that doctor's note out of his backpack and send it to the office. So you know that one of his absences is going to be an excused absence. So really he would not be on this truant list. He hasn't hit that first trigger yet. So you can go back in and change that attendance to reflect that. That's really the purpose of the view, or one of the purposes of the view. Once you go out and run your extract, that is going to create the data in the system. Okay, that's going to create that information that lives in the system. The view is just that. It's a view to show you the students that are in that situation. The extract is actually creating the data. So once you have gone into your view and you have checked against your records and the teacher records, now you can run your extract. So underneath our view only, we have our extract. Again, running the extract is going to create that data in the system. It runs the exact same way, unexcused, level name, and trigger. If you want to run all 3 trigger levels, you will need to run this report 3 times. Okay, I have a question. So the LEA runs the refresh under ATN, however often it decides, and then the schools, before running their view or extract, has to run refresh premier attendance. Yes. So you do need to refresh that premier attendance because that data may have changed. So best practice is to refresh and then run your review so that you're getting the most accurate attendance data. Okay, so once this is run, I can look at my extract. And again, I apologize for not having any information in this training site. But for when you run the extract, we see something different. on the view only, we saw use this students as the current selection, and we could use those group functions. Here, it gives us the option to use report works. So if you use report works reports, this will take you out and to report works, and you can choose which report you want to run. Or if you do have the right to run report works developer, you can do it that way as well. Minimum age to extract. This can be used to pull those under 16 at the high school level. It can, but it is recommended that we leave that as a 0 in all cases. Okay. So report works is one of the options that we have for reporting our attendance letters. The other is, under my sorry about that. You could also use form letters to set up your attendance. So under setup, you have your form letters. Now, this particular school in this LEA does have a form letter for their absences already set up. So it may be something that you would like to set up at your school. So then you would just have to run it with the students that fall into a specific group, and exporting that report as a template as well. So it just depends on what kind of reporting you are comfortable with as to how you want to report those 3, 6, and 10-day absences. Okay. So that's the process for setting up attendance tracking at both the LEA and at the school level. I'm going to pause for a minute, look through these questions. If there's any that I feel like the group needs to hear the answer to, I will go over those. One question that stood out was, how often does the school have to run the refresh premier attendance? And that it depends on how often you run your letters. A lot of schools do it each week just to stay on top. As to the refresh not holding the setting, there may be a problem with the setup. If you have not already, send in a ticket to make sure that the settings were correct for it to run nightly or however often you want. If you already have sent in a ticket, if you wouldn't mind forwarding that to Sue Ann and myself so that maybe we can take a look at it. Let's see if there's any other. Another question about, what is the best time to run that refresh? Is it best to run it at certain times, run it nightly? And again, that's up to you. There have been some issues with it running nightly. Most people have found it best to hit the button each day, like we've talked about. It's not the most convenient, but okay. Why do we enter a 0 under the code to day attendance conversion for daily attendance school when the FTE conversion is time to day? Well, the 0 is going to be for your absence code, and it's honestly, it's the way that we are seeing that the system is able to extract that data. It's the only way that we've been able to get daily attendance schools to pull correctly. With the 0 is the absence, and that's what's making it work. So there was a question, if we track tardies for reasons other than you're late, can a trigger be set up for those? Is it the same process? We do not track tardies in the state of North Carolina through this tracking method. If your school or LEA is doing something manually, then that is possibly their decision, but we do not track anything other than unexcused absences in the state of North Carolina. So you can just make, the question is, when you're talking about the student truancy view only, we can make the students the current selection and then use the group functions and print letters as you normally would. That is correct. If you only run the view, you do not get the trigger set, however. Okay, so you do need to run them both. But really, once your view has been corrected and you have all of the information the way it needs to look, you can use those group functions to print that report, yes. But make sure that you're running that extract so that that data does go into the system, that it does trigger that in PowerSchool. Okay, so like I said, that is all of the procedure that we have for attendance tracking for you. I am going to stay on the line to to look at questions and answer questions as best as we can. Again, if Suanna or myself, cannot answer the question that you are asking, then we will try to search for the answer for you. I do want to, before we end, to give you some contact information. This is so you can get in touch with Suanna and myself. And that's not it. If we find that the ATT was missing from a school, can it be added anytime during the year? Yes, the ATT can be added anytime during the year if you are looking to track attendance at that school. Not sure I understand your question, Nancy. What reports do we have to view who has received a trigger? The view student, the student truancy view is going to show you which students have hit that trigger. Remember, trigger 1 equals that 3 days unexcused absences. Trigger 2 equals the 6-day absence threshold. And trigger 3 is the 10-day absence threshold. So you can see our contact information here. You may have worked with Aaron Bissonette in his trainer capabilities before, but he does have a new role. He is the new system analyst for PowerSchool. He makes sure that things are running as normal as possible. He does also help out with some of our trainings if we do need him. But Suanna and I are your training team. We are hoping that we get a third member of our training team soon so that we have even more support for you out in the field. And also your home-based support email down there at the bottom. Remember, if you do not have rights and access to submit a ticket, then it will probably just bounce back to you and no one will see it. So if you do have something that you do need to submit a ticket on, make sure you are set up in the system or you are going to someone that is in the system. We had a question that says, where does the system put the tracking on the student record? Is there a place to actually view what the student has received? So this is, Laura, in a table that we cannot get to. Sue Ann's been working to try to find a way, but at this time there's no way to remove that trigger manually. The only way is to correct the attendance, and then that will remove the trigger. So when you look at your view, if you change the attendance for little Robbie and then run your view again, he should not be on that list if he hasn't hit that trigger. Now, once you hit that extract, that's when it's going to create that data. Is there any supporting documentation we can print off to guide us in the setup process? If there is not a document under presentations on the NCSIS website currently, there will be one very shortly. Hopefully by the end of the week, we can get this presentation on the NCSIS website. Even though I did go through in the live training environment, the presentation that you're seeing now does have all of the steps that you can follow or should follow in order to set up your attendance tracking and notification correctly. After the trigger has been applied and we want to see a cumulative list of who has reached each trigger after running the extract, do we just go back to the view only? There is a report that you can run if you run the Premier attendance manually. If you have it set up to run automatically, you cannot run that report. If you send Sue Ann an email, she will get you the directions to find that report. And finally, if you get a few minutes, if you could give us some feedback on our presentations. This presentation today, we are always looking to find ways to make it more relevant for you out in the field and honor the time that you have given to us. So if you would take a few minutes to place your feedback on this form. Again, I will give it a few minutes to answer some trailing questions, but thank you so much for your attendance and participation today. I hope that we have been able to answer the questions that you have. I hope that you can contact us if you need anything in the future, and we may be seeing you all again very soon. So thank you again. I will be staying, Sue Ann and I will be staying on. She has done the bulk of the answering of the questions while I've been presenting. She is an invaluable asset to me, so thank you so much for that, Sue Ann. But again, we'll stay on just for a couple of minutes to go over or to answer any other questions. I know this webinar was set for several hours and it's only 1:45, but you know the process is straightforward once you have the hang of it. And reporting is really about what you're comfortable with. There's not one way report works or forms or group functions that it works better than any other one. It's just what you're comfortable with. So just keep that in mind as you are going forward. And again, thank you so much. And if you want to listen for some more questions, hang out. But if not, have a great rest of your day. All right, will there be a training on using ReportWorks and or setting up our attendance letters? We have a form letter, but it's not pulling the data correctly. At this time, there is no plan for you for us, to teach report work letters. PowerSchool is the best place at this point to get the information you need, or other coordinators who have been doing this process. Can the first report be run at the school level, or does it have to be done at the LEA level? I'm not really sure which report you're talking about. The refresh attendance has to be done at the LEA level in order for you to get the most accurate information. Another thing is you need to run your refresh premier attendance so that you get the most accurate information. Before that, the truancy view and extract should be run. So there have been issues with meeting attendance tracking and notification in the past. We have since found that this is working correctly. So meeting attendance schools, when they are set up this way, should work just fine. Yes. So we have added the ATT to the school. We ran the refresh attendance views. It ran a really long time. Yes, I'm sure if I went back, mine wouldn't even be completed. Just pulled up the report, the view only, and it was blank like the one you had. It could be that a date is off, quite possibly. It could be that your LEA hasn't refreshed. No, the LEA does not have a refresh premier attendance. It does have, however, a refresh attendance report that should be run. If a school does try to run the, let me go back and show you. So this is for the school, their refresh premier attendance views. Now for an LEA, they want to run the refresh attendance tracking data. If a school were to try to run this, it would give them an error. When our schools ran the view only, we still had students that have been withdrawn from our school system showing up. A few students have been withdrawn almost a year. The only thing that I can think of without seeing that is that, at one point they were active students. I'm not sure if Sue Ann has any other inquiry about this, so I'll give her a few minutes to look over that question. But I think I remember hearing that there was some issues with that out there.
There may be, can you hear me, Shannon?
Yeah.
There may be some orphaned attendance to those students that have been withdrawn from last year. So you need to check orphan section attendance and orphan attendance anywhere that may be causing those students to show up.
Okay, so if you didn't hear that, you might have gotten some orphan attendance somewhere in there, and that could be what's causing the those withdrawn students to show up. Okay, Wendy, you had a question. What makes the school's name show in the calculation update year? They will show up once you have set up the school and run the Premier tracking. Does this mean if our schools do not show up here that they've never been set up correctly? It is my understanding that yes, they do have to have that set up. They have to have their code in there. Not sure if they have to have run the Premier tracking though. I know that there are the other things have to be set up, but in order to show up on your calculation update year, I'm not necessarily sure that they need to run the Premier tracking. Okay, at the LEA level, I tried to set the refresh attendance tracking to run nightly. Then at school level, tried to run the truancy and attendance levels reached report and got a message it could not run because refresh attendance tracking was currently running. I deleted the automated nightly refresh and went back to the school and the report ran fine. What did I do wrong in setting up the nightly run at the LEA level? If you set the tracking to run automatically, that report will not work. So what you're seeing is normal. In order to get the report to work, you must run the tracking manually. Okay, so again, I'm going to take these questions and clean them up, clean up the answers, make sure that they read in a way that's going to be understandable to you, and get them out to the people that are that were registered for this webinar today. If you have any questions after the webinar is over, please feel free to email Sue-Ann or myself. Again, Sue-Ann has been helping to answer the questions. Most of the questions she's been answering for you. So hopefully we'll be able to get the information that you need. If she has asked you for a follow-up, please make sure that you are emailing her or myself so that we can follow up with your school or your LEA to try and see what's going on there. Other than the 0 in the conversion code that is for daily only, is everything else for period attendance too? Yes, the only difference between meeting attendance and daily attendance in order to set this up is that 0 in the conversion code. And the meeting attendance schools will not have that.
Right, and one other thing where you put the daily time today, you would put meeting time today in the method.
Okay, yes. So that was if you have the daily time today in the method. If you have a meeting attendance school, it would say meeting time today. All right. Well, I'm going to close down the webinar from here. Thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your day and your week, and have a very happy Halloween.